Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Mad Mamluks podcast. My name is Sim. Along with me are my co-hosts, Tareq and Humam. We'll get to them later, but first, we have to give a shout out to our sponsors, halfhardeen.com. If you or anyone you know are interested in a significant other, direct them to halfhardeen.com and help them through the marriage process. Halfhardeen.com is unique in the sense that they have a private matrimonial experience where everyone and their mother is not involved in what is happening in your business. Wahidinvest.com is a website that is dedicated to halal investment. They will utilize your money in companies that are investing or companies that have halal businesses so that your returns are halal as well. MyWasiya.com is a website that is direct. MyWasiya.com is dedicated towards building a Islamically compliant will. Please go to mywasiya.com and click. We have a link in the description below, and you can save some money by clicking on that. All right, these two characters I've had the pleasure of spending most of my day with. Tareq Tamr is a Twitter guy.
Oh, come on. and you're saying that it's okay, no comment.
He said specifically not to call him a Twitter guy, so I'm just calling him a Twitter guy just to troll him. So yeah, Tareq is pretty well known on Twitter, and he has a YouTube channel as well. And Humam is a man of many talents, especially we actually just bonded over Arturo after we did our Arturo episode. He just messaged me and saying like, hey, I love Arturo too. Humam had a whole, your wedding was themed Arturo, right?
Yeah.
You had like a,
I did it before it was cool.
yeah.
Before people even watched Arturo.
Yeah, he caught on to it way before anyone, before Arturo was even a thing. But how long have you been married?
A little bit over a year.
Yeah. So we actually in Chicago we have the mass ICNA convention. It's a pretty popular convention. It's probably considered part of the big three conventions that happen in North America. There's the ISNA convention, there's the ICNA convention, and then there's what happens at the RIS, right? That just happened a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys go to RIS? Tareq is from Canada, so
Not this year, but
I've never been.
visited before.
how is that?
It's it has a little bit of a different vibe, but it's a similar culture. I think the bazaar is pretty similar. The speeches are generally similarly themed. Maybe you could say just the orientation maybe of the talks, or the themes of the talks are maybe lean a little bit more towards one direction than another. But
One Direction, the band?
yes, exactly, the band. Yeah, but no, it's honestly more similar than I think people like to admit.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, for the average visitor,
Yeah.
it's going to be similar. There's a lot of overlap in the speakers, a lot of overlap in the general undertones of the talks.
But I always thought that RIS was more dedicated towards younger, what's it called, Islamically inclined young kids, or people who are not
I'm not sure.
people who would listen to One Direction.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I don't think that's like particularly
True.
Something that I mean, I've only been to RIS once. I've only been to Masikna once. And in general, it felt like a similar vibe, honestly. I think maybe at
I mean,
RIS
literally, the name is called Reviving the Islamic Spirit.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
thought it was
understand why
more
they
like
would have like
spiritual.
a club isnag happening at RIS.
Yeah,
Or do they?
So to my knowledge, there isn't anything similar to that.
Okay.
But
So that's an improvement.
but that's
What's a club is now?
You don't know what a club isnag is?
No.
Oh, Mom, you missed out big time. Poor guy.
What is
Well, club isag is where you meet singles, and
that?
you just it's usually the hotel lobby of the Hyatt or the Hilton. I don't remember which one, but I think it was the Hyatt.
It's like a legit structured event, or is it
No,
just
it's
like
just the way
coined?
everyone.
It's
It's
just
just
young
everyone. All
people.
the young kids have.
I mean, they do that at Masikna too, but like, we never coined it.
it's all low key.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Or is that? So I know a lot more Desis go to Isna. right? And
Yeah.
a lot more like Arab go to mass ikna. Does it have to do with like culture? Like are Desis more like open to like
I think before ICNA and
courting?
Mass merged, ICNA was more of a Desi event. Like most of the Indian Pakistanis used to be associated with it,
Yeah.
and now after Mass kind of joined up with ICNA, a lot of the Arab population as well came to it. Before that, I think there was Mina, Maya.
Maya, yeah.
So there were quite a few different conferences that back in the '90s that, um, for for whatever reason they've kind of evaporated or they've kind of merged into ICNA or Mass ICNA. Anyway, as the listeners can see on YouTube, there's a couple variations in skin tone here.
Oh my
You
God.
guys are happy.
Listen.
You don't understand how much crap I get about this. And it's not that many people. It's just once in a while. There's a couple people who always mention, "Oh, you guys are brown and you don't have any diversity." I'm like, dude, I don't even look at people's colors or how.
He's colorblind.
I don't think.
Dude, you know, someone was the other day, a couple weeks ago or whatever, they were saying, "Oh, you know, I don't mean this about Desis, but in general, so I don't mean to offend you." I'm like, dude, just say what you have to say. I don't even think along that lines. Like, you don't have to give these precursories before making a statement about something. But he was just trying to say, like, you know, Desis Park bad or something. I can't remember.
When they say no offense and then
I
say
mean,
something offensive.
No, well, I wasn't. Look. There's true stereotypes that we have, and we all have to accept that. There's, you know, Desis who smell bad, and not necessarily all Desis smell bad, but some do. And there's Desis that I consider to smell bad that because of the certain region of India that they're part of, the spices that they use are very pungent, and that's not a negative stereotype. That's a characteristic that's associated with them and their culture that I don't find pleasant, and that should be okay. What do you guys think about that? Is that something that's unreasonable?
I mean, I've met Arab dudes who like to cook using spices that are particularly popular among Desis, and they I guess they inherited the exact same smell. So
Really?
I think it's less about maybe that's just from my experience, but maybe it's less about the
got
region
some
and more about the
stereotypes
cooking.
about certain Arab too. Like, my God, you go to Tarawih after Fطور and you pray next to a Palestinian, guarantee you he's burping up garlic and onions. Guarantee it.
Yeah.
Every culture loves garlic. Who doesn't?
Nah,
Italians,
man.
Indians.
They eat it in quantities that are unfathomable.
Have you seen an Italian dish that doesn't have garlic in it?
Nope.
At least it's regulated.
You made a point on diversity.
Yeah.
I don't know if the diversity they were looking for was a pale-looking dude, but
Yeah.
That's just the lights. He's very olive-skinned.
Okay.
You're not very olive-skinned
I'll
either.
take
You're-
it. I'll
he's
take it.
serious.
You don't
You're
have to
not
take it back. You don't have to
Humam's
take it back.
olive-skinned.
I'm like
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like desert,
But-
like sand.
But the lights here are very unflattering.
Yeah, that's why I have that resting bee face that my wife is always telling you guys about.
It's the light in your eyes.
These lights are like right in your face, and
Yeah.
that's the only way. That's the only reason why I have this face. But Humam, you are from which region? Iraq, right?
Yeah, Iraq.
How's it going over there?
It's not too well, honestly. Not too well. I mean,
What part of Iraq?
Samara, or AKA Samara.
That's the scary girl from The Ring. Isn't that?
What?
Yeah,
What's The
Samara.
Okay, that's
No, I thought that was. Well, it could be because there's a lot of like black magic that's associated with like Iraq and the.
No, that's Morocco, bro.
No. the original black magic where it came
Babylon.
from Babylon and stuff.
Yeah, that's
And
like
I think-
southern Iraq.
I think
Yeah.
that's why they probably named that girl Samara. Because it's not a common name. We're like, what a weird name. That's actually a city in Iraq, and I actually googled
Yeah.
that name.
So the ancient civilization that lived in Iraq,
Yeah.
like the people who invented the wheel, for example, they're called Sumerians.
Yeah.
Or in Arabic you call them Somariyin. So Samara or Samara is different, right? It comes
Yeah.
from you know how like Arab combine like several words to make one thing,
Right.
right? Like ba'labak. You get what I mean? This is several words. So Samara is surra man ra'a, which means a delight to the one who sees it. So over time, people got tired of saying, "Hey, you going to Surah Mara'a today?"
Yeah.
So they just, "Hey, going to Samara,"
Yeah.
right?
Well, it fits you very well.
Allah, Allah.
Speaking of scary movies, there was also another movie I saw on Netflix called The Babadook, and that means in Arabic that means Baba means father, and that's
Yeah.
in Indian as well or Urdu.
Mhm.
But Duke means what? Knock.
Oh, Dug.
Dug.
Oh, yeah.
Dug.
Baba, and the whole movie was about there was a monster who's like terrorizing this little child by knocking on the door or something. and I kid you, there's no way that has to be a coincidence that they made a movie title called Babadook, and the kid's father's missing throughout the whole movie. Like they don't explain why, but and I think in the kid's mind that he's thinking that it's his father who's knocking. But they never kind of go into that territory. But it's a great scary movie. I mean, it's terrifying. I don't know why I watch scary movies, but they're because I really can't handle them. Did you hear about this new movie that came out, the Bird Box or whatever?
Not really. I'm
You
not
know
into
all
scary movies.
All I
God,
heard,
you guys are so religious.
oh,
No,
come
no,
on.
Why? Why
No,
do I have to
it's
deal
not
with
that.
this?
No,
I have to
like-
call up Muzaffar and bring him on.
the only thing,
talk about
the only
some-
thing
I
I,
like
heard
action
about
Mr.
comedies.
Movie Critic.
there. Listen, I've watched some great movies in my time. I'm saying that like I don't watch movies.
In my time,
No, I
like
will
this
say-
guy got like 20.
This guy's 25 years old.
no. Listen,
It's
listen.
my day.
No, but no, I just think nowadays like so many movies are just rehashes of the same thing over and over again. Like in general.
What's your favorite movie?
Okay, right now, if you just ask me off the top of my head, first movie that came to my mind is Interstellar. But I don't know if I sat down and I made a list, I think it would be in my top 10. I don't know if it'd be number 1. But right now, the
Really?
most recent, like best movie that I've watched,
Yeah.
has to be Interstellar.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
So which movies are being rehashed?
I mean, look, I listen. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this,
Yeah.
so I don't want to say it.
Go ahead.
Marvel movies are overrated, man.
What? I hate you.
See, like I listen,
Turn off his mic.
But I will also gladly admit that I make that is a very uninformed opinion. I watched the Iron Man movies and I watched like Avengers and.
See, you didn't grow up with comic books. I'm betting. Right?
You know what's funny? I didn't grow up with comic books, but we were gifted an encyclopedia of like
Marvel heroes.
it was X-Men specifically.
Right.
So like I went through that encyclopedia a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm familiar with like X-Men, and then like really familiar with like the history of X-Men, even though like I didn't really like engage with the comics.
Yeah.
But
crazy.
as I got older, I read a little bit of like Batman comics because
Right.
I like Batman as a character.
You guys grew up way differently than me. Like I don't know, for some reason the whole like fantasy sci-fi cartoon thing never really was a part of my childhood.
Why not?
I don't know, like even now I don't like superhero movies. I just think or like sci-fi movies or it's just weird to me. I like realistic movies. Like even games, right? Like I don't like playing like fake like flying dragons and مش عارف إيش.
because to him, real life is a fantasy.
No, like I like games like Grand Theft Auto, right?
Hmm.
Because it's like this guy looks like a person that's a car,
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
house, a street. I like real stuff.
Yeah.
Same thing with movies. Like I like
You know
action.
who else is like this?
Who?
Women. They don't like the sci-fi business. So I try to
I don't
get
know about
my
that.
love for
I don't know about
sci-fi into my wife, and she's like, "What the hell are you watching? Why are you
But I mean,
putting me
he-
through this?"
He said
Stargate. What's Stargate? Well, I'm like, this is a classic movie. This is great. Star Trek. Okay, let's.
What about
let's
Star
go.
Wars? What's your take on Star Wars?
Nothing. Oh my God, Star Wars. She's because of the whole reboot and everything.
Hmm.
She tried to watch it. She'd keep on repeatedly falling asleep.
What'd you
I
think?
don't
I don't
blame
like
her,
them.
honestly. I don't like you might hate me for this, but I really think sci-fi is corny.
What'd you guys think? Or I guess Humam doesn't have an opinion on this,
Yeah.
but Sim, what's your opinion on The Last Jedi?
Oh, I hate it. I hate the whole reboot. It's garbage.
The reboot, yeah, I don't like the way
It's
that they've
so
done
forced.
It has been awful,
I didn't feel like there was a need to have a female Jedi. It just seems so out of place. The way they killed off Luke Skywalker was. I can't use that R word anymore, but it was horrible.
You guys don't
what they
like
did with them.
you guys don't like old school like action comedies like Martin Lawrence, Eddie Murphy.
old school. He's referring to movies that came out in like 2002.
Yeah. For me, that's old school, right? I was young. I was. a kid.
I love those movies as well.
Like,
I mean,
you know, National Security and like
Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah, Beverly Hills Cop, Coming to
Those were great.
America, Bad Boys.
I love those.
Those are the kinds of movies I like.
That's awesome. You redeemed yourself, so
Allah, alhamdulillah.
you're back in my good graces. But yeah, those were great movies. But how do we get on the movies stuff? I don't know. We were talking about Tareq being lame.
Yeah, probably. I think that's what it was. No, it was you asked something about
Oh.
movies. Wait, say it.
Yeah, it was something about what was your favorite movie?
No, before you asked the favorite movie, somebody said something about
I don't know if we were making a larger point on anything, but we came together today because of ICNA. We saw we had a lot of experiences at the bazaar. I think we met some surprisingly amazing people, and that we hope to bring on the podcast. And we talked to them. Tareq met with them. Tareq just was so blown away by what they were doing. But what I love about what's happening with our community now is just that people are taking it to the next level. At least people who are professionals at their craft. And I think that's something I was talking to people at my masjid about and telling them, like, hey, you don't have to do something like the Mamluks. You have to do something that you're good at. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're an Oracle or SAP, you got to bring those skills and apply them in different areas of your life. Because those skills, you think that they're just for your work, but that methodology, that way of thinking can apply itself to organizations and people and how you gather data at a masjid, you know? So that, I don't know if you got that same vibe, Tareq, especially talking to those people that we were talking to earlier today.
Yeah, so, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think there is this issue where we feel like the things that are already seen are the only things that are the only routes or roads to potentially take. So, for example, if we see, a Muslim speaker, we think that the end of religiosity is to become a Muslim speaker. If we see that we've benefited from, say, social media or from, podcasting, YouTube, we think, well, then this is the end goal of, what I should become.
That's crucial.
I mean, I read something about this earlier a while ago, but it was about how, like, so many people who become teachers, they cite, I became a teacher because, like, one of the first things that, like, I saw was teachers and how much, like, I benefited from my teachers, which, that's not to say this is a bad thing or, how often this happens, but it's to say, like, a lot of times we follow in the example that we saw, in front of us. And I do think that we have to try to think outside of the box, especially when it comes to fields that are already very full. There's actually something we were talking with the brother about from the Quran project. We were talking about how it's so necessary for us to realize that, hey, if somebody has a similar project that I want to do, we don't necessarily need to compete. We could work together and see how we could, collaborate on creating something that benefits all of us.
Yeah.
Or, we can try to take our skills to something different.
Right.
But it's not, I mean, there is benefit to competition, but sometimes it's detrimental. Sometimes you end up just splitting the audience.
Right. And we were talking earlier about how some of the various interpretations of Islam are competing against each other to have the most complete fiqh understanding. Sometimes about, like, in my opinion, not Tareq or Humam, but my feeling is that some of the whole moon sighting discussions or the way they interpret it, I think it's just a whole competition about whose school wins and whose interpretation gets the notoriety that they want. And I feel like, there's some validity to having discourse and disagreement with fiqh sightings, but then when you discount or when you're hurting the Jama'at, the unity of Muslims, I think it's become counterproductive having that disagreement. And it's sad that you see all these various. And I'm not saying anyone in particular. I'm saying everyone's guilty, and someone has to back down, and no one wants to back down and say, like, hey, you know what? For the sake of the unity of the Muslims of North America, I'm going to squish my opinion, going to toss it to the ground, throw it in the trash can, whatever. Because this is the more important, or what's a more superseding argument, or I'm not using the right word, but the more important thing is keeping everyone together and not fighting.
That's the issue, right? Is that when it comes to priorities,
a
lot of people just have different priorities, right? So for some people who might be engaging in this, and I'm not going to go into why they're doing it, but For some people, for them, the priority is that we elevate what is the most correct scholarly opinion. Like that is the number one priority to them. And so because that's their perspective, they think that this is the goal that should ultimately be achieved at any cost.
Right.
You know, some people, I'm saying, not necessarily, you know, everybody or even a majority. Whereas, for example, somebody else might say, hey, our number one priority is uniting the people. So even if the opinion might be a little bit weak or whatever, that, you know, this is the, you know, the greater benefit. And, you know, that's not a benefit that is up to the awam and like the general public and the lay people to decide. This is something for the scholarly and the people of knowledge to decide. But one of the issues sometimes is that some people who are, you know, maybe, you know, very involved or engrossed in scholarship, sometimes their priorities might not align with the priorities of maybe the scholars who are engrossed in the situation of the people.
Right.
So it does go back at the end of the day to the people of knowledge and the scholars, but there's a difference between those who are conscious and aware of the well-being of the people and those who are maybe, you know, engrossed in, say, the academic side of things or you know, the research side of things. Wallahu a'lam.
Honestly, I don't see a big problem with having different opinions coexisting. Yeah, that's one of the rahmas of having, you know, the four schools of thought, is that you have any diversity of thought, and I think that's okay. I think the problem here becomes when there's bad adab, bad akhlaq, when people don't know how to behave, right?
Yeah.
I think it serves a purpose when you have, you know, when you have different approaches. If you want a moon site, you want to calculate, that's fine. I think it works in different ways for different communities. Yeah, you can't go to like a Deobandi Pakistani community and be like, hey, we're gonna start calculating. Like, what are you doing? You're gonna cause more harm than good, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, you know, you're gonna have a tough time going to like a Isna crowd and being like, hey, 50 of you, come out, let's go moonwatch. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that the Deobandis, the calculators, all the global moonsighters, everyone needs to come down and sit down like, hey, majority of our Muslim community has no idea that we're from different schools, they don't even understand the term fiqh. They don't understand. They completely have an elementary level of knowledge on how Islamic jurisprudence is conducted, and by us sending conflicting messages, especially about something so fundamental like the day of Eid, that a day where even the people who don't attend the masjid at all throughout the year will come, and you're sending them different messages about the faith and what I mean, forget about the non-Muslims and how we're perceived when we give them 2 different days for Eid. Forget about that. Just your own community, and it's not even that it's a small number. It's a very large number of people who it's their one day that they come to the masjid.
Yeah.
And you're sending them conflicting messages.
That's a tough reality, and I wouldn't even know how to remedy it because in the past, you know, this problem was avoided because there was a central Islamic leadership. You know, we can go into the nuances and details, but in general, there's always been like an authority.
Right.
Okay. And they dictate. They basically say what goes.
Right.
Now we live in a time where that doesn't exist. So I honestly I don't know what the best approach is. Like, do we let go of what we believe to be as haqq?
Yeah.
Right. For the greater good, or do we just accept our differences? Right.
I think you nailed it. I think that was one of the symptoms of not having that central Islamic authority. I mean, this is just one of many hundreds of thousands of symptoms that we're experiencing right now. It's not having that central authority to help us, because we don't have this clergy or a hierarchy that Catholicism has, that, you know, with the Pope that can issue an edict that will overturn anyone else's opinion on any matter, right?
Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. You know, it's like sometimes we might say, hey, we wish we had a central authority to make everything, you know, more clear. Other times it's like, I mean, the fact that we don't have an authority like that is a rahmah.
Well, even Well, are you talking about on a political sense? It can't be a rahma on a political level because we're getting our butts kicked all over the world in Burma. And
No, I think he's talking specifically about the
mean,
differences of opinion.
oh yeah, okay.
Just
for,
because
I'm like,
you're gonna get me in trouble.
the brothers in Syria are going to be coming for you, Tareq.
No.
But you know what? I think there
From the
are some
perspective of
things.
religious authority, you know.
Yeah.
I think there are some things that should be dictated by a central authority and some things that shouldn't. That should be left, right? So, like for example, when the Abbas Khalifa went to Imam Malik and he said, "Hey, I want to make your madhab the madhab of the empire, right? And I'll write your muwatta out of gold and I'll put it in the Kaaba." Right?
Yeah.
What did Imam Malik say? He refused. He said, "How can you do that when there are these other valid schools of thought?"
Yeah.
Right? So there's rahma in the differences of opinion, but at the same time, like for example, the Khalifas in Baghdad, you get what I mean? I highly doubt that there was multiple salawat Eid, right? Like one.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So there's unifying like symbols that should be.
So when we talk about like differences of opinion and stuff, I feel like it's everybody. Whenever we say, "Hey, we should all respect each other's different opinions," everybody kind of just nods along and say, "Yeah, of course we should." Like we all agree with that.
Yeah.
And then you see in practice that's not the case because I think we don't really. And this is kind of to move beyond even just like specifically the point of something like Eid or something like scholarship, into just like a general sense of how we perceive differences because. One thing is like, I'll respect your opinion. Like this is a common, quote that's out there. Like I'll respect your opinion as long as like your opinion doesn't like deny me like my human rights or something like
Liberalism.
that. No, I don't want to go into that. But like,
it's liberal humanism. That's literally what it is.
But like the idea is that like as long as your opinion doesn't deny somebody their rights and it's like then you're free to it. But
basically, you do whatever you want so long as you don't infringe on anyone else.
So
all right.
That's kind of not the point that I want to make with that. I'm just kind of using that as an example of like what it means to respect the difference of opinion. So Islamically speaking, for example, I should be able to look at you and say respect your values, respect your principles, and say, look, I am not going to assume your intentions, and I can disagree with your actions as long as your actions aren't explicitly forbidden or explicitly causing a clear harm to people. Then I should be able to say, look, I disagree with you, but you can have your way. Now here's the question, right? Is like, well, how do we define harm? Because everybody, that's really, really subjective.
I don't like that framework though.
No, but what I'm saying is like this is like one of the ways that we present, the issue of how do we disagree respectfully, right?
I don't.
So I mean, Tareq, I know like when you came through to my house, you saw some instruments and stuff. That through my door. There are people who I'm friends with. If they saw those, they'd be like, "Unacceptable, Mr. Sim. You call yourself a person who's a torchbearer, calling people to the faith, and you, my friend, are committing ithm.
You are a
sinner."
So what?
There are people. I mean, I call them haram police, and I'm not against haram police. I feel like there are people who are genuinely interested in your salvation and they want the best for you. But then there's the uninformed haram police who don't know the various nuances of fiqh and Islamic jurisprudence and how, there's different opinions regarding different things all across life, right?
But see, that's the thing, right? Is like, everybody thinks that they're informed.
Right.
Not a lot of people will say, "Hey, I'm uninformed, therefore I shouldn't form an opinion." Because like naturally speak, because what by doing that you're resisting something, right?
Yeah.
If you're just passively engaging with the world, what are you doing? You're forming opinions all the time.
Yeah.
So like this idea, for example, of like don't judge me, right? It's like, or don't judge anybody, or I hate people who judge. It's like it's such an ambiguous statement. You are judging everything you interact with all the time. The issue is what is the nature of that judgment. So if Humam makes a mistake and I'm judging his akhirah or I'm judging his intentions, those are things I can't judge. Like those are not things that. Those are based on things that are not in the material world, right? It's like I can't deal with that. The things that are dealing with the future, dealing with the unseen.
I think it also goes back to just lack of knowledge too, because these haram police, as the one Sim's referring to at least, they have a little bit of knowledge, right? Yeah. But a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. But because if someone just enters the realm of fiqh or studies it, they will learn that as long as there is ikhtilaf, There's no enjoining good and forbidding evil on it.
But that's like, we can like theoretically like hope that everybody gains enough ilm so that they can make these decisions, but that's not going to happen.
No,
like,
I'm not saying that.
speaking.
I'm saying you.
No,
we
I
need,
know.
we need to regulate who does what.
No, but the thing
People
is,
need to stay in their lane, is what I'm saying.
of course, and that's the thing is like, well, how do you tell people? How do you help people? Everybody agrees that everyone should stay in their lane,
Yeah.
but people don't know what that lane is.
Mm.
So that's the question. So, well, how do we help people figure out what their lane is? So
this is hilarious. This reminds me of so one of the shiuch here in Chicago posted an article of it was like a political article, right? It was fine, but the thumbnail of it had like a picture of a woman who was not wearing hijab, right? She was a politician, like some foreign leader or whatever, and someone commented and was like, "Sheikh, isn't this aura? Like, why didn't you delete this?" And the sheikh replied, and he was like, "Dude, look at your profile picture." It was like a group picture, and so he was like, "But you're a sheikh, right?" And he was like, "Well, actually, this is the ruling. If there's, I don't remember. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he basically explained it, right? Because it provided useful information." And he was like, "Oh, well, I didn't know. Like, you're the sheikh," and he was like, "Exactly." Like,
yeah.
like, why are you? Who
Well,
are you trying to impersonate, Yani?
I mean, there were, look, there's some instances where students who came back from overseas, they learned the faith, and they came back and they said, Sim, I respectfully decline taking this picture with you because I feel pictures are haram. And they came back bona fide sheikh and everything, and I'm like, listen, you say this, but where's the grounding principles? Where did you come up with why a picture is not acceptable? And when you kind of get it out of them, like these are the understandings. This is why Sheikh so and so felt like the picture
Like
photograph is impermissible.
Like out of wara.
You found out that what a weak argument it was. Like like this had nothing really to do with they would say a reflection is fine, but then they would realize that you do realize like a camera is not operating the same way as a painter or a sculptor is.
It's capturing the image, not creating one.
So these are the things that like you found out that even from scholars that the way that they're interpreting the text is not even.
But see, that's the thing though, right? It's like
in a very intelligent manner.
Somebody might have that opinion, but the way that I view it simply is like when it comes to matters of fiqh, scholars have their methods of interpretation, coming up with rulings. That's fine, but the thing is, it's the issue is with not only just like you can elevate the ruling that you follow based on the school and based on your scholars, whatever, but the issue is then going to the level where you're degrading other opinions. Simply because they aren't in agreement with yours. If you want to disagree with them, for example, and say, well, here's the reason why and the evidence is, etc., that's a scholarly engagement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for the masses, it's like there has to be a level of considering the whole picture, considering that, there are people that agree, there are people that disagree.
The principle, the main principle in fiqh is that, we believe that we are right and you are wrong, with the possibility that we are wrong and you are right? But
this is the saying of Imam Scifi, I believe, right?
I don't know. I just know this is one of the founding rules of like
one of the wise. Yeah.
So, but the thing is that people twist this on both sides, right? You'll have people saying, for example, that as long as we follow this principle, then it's all kumbaya, right? Which it has merit. All four schools are valid. Right, but at the end of the day, a follower of one school follows that school for a reason, right? Because he believes it is the most close interpretation of the Quran and Sunnah. He believes it to be the most correct one, right? I mean, why else would you follow a school? Why would you follow one particular school of thought if you didn't think it was superior?
Out of convenience, because those are the teachers that you have, which is fine too.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm just saying, it's like
sure.
My thing is like when it comes to all of these kind of fiqh discussions or whatever, it's like I'm concerned with, okay, what's the practical reality for people, right? It's like when we talk about differences of opinion, for example.
Yes.
We don't. from the scholarly basis, right? It's like, do people need to have a better etiquette in the way that they approach their their debates and their fiqh discussions? Sure, okay. But I'm a layperson. That's not my job. I'm not here to tell the scholars how they should have their disagreements and their debates. But it's like, okay, how do we as lay people have these discussions amongst ourselves, right? If I tell you, yo, Human, this is the ruling that I follow, this is the one that I believe is correct, and you say, well, this is the one that I follow, and I believe it's correct.
Yeah.
I should be able to disagree with you without putting you down, or without putting your opinion down, or elevating myself above yours, or my opinion, or the opinion of my teachers over yours. And I think that's something that is.
I think you can elevate it in your own world.
Right? You could say, like, for example, this is why I follow it. This is why I believe it.
Exactly.
But it's like, if you go into the point that, like, if you go to the point where you're suddenly like, this is why you're wrong, etc. Now you've entered into scholarly discourse, right? Yes. And it's like, is that the role of?
Yeah. You should never go that far.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly, and that's the point. But I kind of wanted to bring this to the bigger point of, like, most disagreements that we have and differences of opinion, in general, I believe, are not based on scholarly issues, right? In general, it's not, well, here's my scholar, here's your scholar. It's like, our general disagreements are simply just based on opinions, whether it's,
Give an example.
I don't know. I mean, you know about Chicago and how we fight tooth and nail about what's halal and sabiha.
Oh, well,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, the level of the detail that they're expecting, the slaughter to occur, whether it's a vertical cut or it's a horizontal cut, and the way that whether a machine can actually slaughter animals or
the tasmiyah.
But see, this is the type of thing, man, that, like, for me personally speaking, like,
but
let the scholars.
The problem is it's crushing businesses as well. That are Tareq. It's like there's businesses who are declared, machine cut, and then all of a sudden it tanks or.
That's something for the. Is this not something for the scholars to discuss between themselves?
But in the meantime, there's businesses failing, though. That's what I'm saying.
But
at least with regards to this issue.
Well, is it not? Does it not go back to people that are just blindly following scholars? Right.
Yeah, but it's that's a repercussion. But the scholars themselves are partly to blame in the respect that they haven't formed consensus on certain issues that are vital to public life in this country.
Some issues like this is like, realistically, we can't wait for a consensus to arrive. People need to live, and like
we can't expect consensus about something like this when most people don't even agree about, like, why should we eat the biha?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like, for me,
like in Chicago, the biha is big, right? You guys have like the biha restaurants, like in Minnesota, where I'm from. I mean, we do have the biha restaurants, but like nobody pays that much attention to it.
Yeah, but sometimes the pork gets snuck in, and then you guys get all surprised, like, oh, there's pork in my food. That's the same thing that happened in other places like London and UK, where they say, like, oh, we don't fight about zabiha like you guys, but you guys end up eating pork, because no one's looking at these restaurants and giving them a close eye that they deserve. We have, mashallah, some amazing people called the halal advocates who actually are designed in certifying all the all the things that, or all the ingredients in a restaurant, and they do it for pennies, for scraps, and they really do it for.
That's very commendable. By the way, I think that this is something that should be done in every community, right? Yeah. Where we should monitor the restaurants that we eat from. I think that's very commendable, and I do think that it's very short-sighted to just be like, America is a Christian country, we'll just eat any meat. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because this also prevents Muslim establishments like butcher shops and factories and stuff like this from being established. Like in Chicago, mashallah, you guys have a lot of infrastructure. You guys have a lot of butcher shops, right?
Yeah.
Minnesota, we don't have. You get what I mean? Because of that.
Well, you guys are also a younger community as well. Majority of people in Minnesota are refugees that came from Somalia and various parts of the Arab world.
You guys started coming to Chicago in the 40s, I believe.
Yeah, we came much longer. Not 40s, but I would say 60s and 70s is when we started coming, and then really a lot of the work started happening in the mid 2000s. The various mega mosques that you see. I don't know, Huam, you come here quite often, but I don't know if you saw the level of masjids that we have over here. I mean,
I actually did pack the mosque here.
If the people around the world saw what kind of majestic masjids that we have, at least in a non-Muslim country, they would be amazed, because
absolutely
in a 5 to 10 mile radius there's like 5 mega mosques. Like mega means like thousands, close to 10. I would say 5,000 people can easily attend without a problem.
Mashallah.
Yeah, in Minnesota,
these
we
are
refer
huge
to you guys
masjids.
as Chicago Sharif.
Yeah. I mean, that we take our food seriously. We take our faith seriously, and
Absolutely.
I think that's something that's admirable about Chicago.
Very much.
They're
so.
not very good about donating to the Mamluks, but you know, mashallah, our brothers in the UK got us covered. I'm joking. There's a couple
Birmingham.
brothers. There's a couple brothers who took issue when last time I knocked Chicago for not donating, and they really came through for us, and I really appreciate them. Thank you so much, those brothers. I don't want to mention your name because I don't know if you want that mentioned, but thank you so much, and you are in my du'as.
Mashallah, tabarakallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless their income.
Chicago messages are gorgeous, by the way.
So I wanted to,
Man.
like, for me, I just think in general, whenever we talk about these discussions, like you say, we're talking about halal food, whatever, you know, and the fiqh discussions and whatnot, I'm still thinking like, okay, how does this apply to the average person, right? Like, how does this apply to the average Muslim? Most
Well,
Muslims,
it's what they eat, man.
I know, but what I mean by that is like,
Yeah.
okay, how is the average Muslim engaging with this difference of opinion, right?
Oh, they're not.
No, at the end of
I
the
mean,
day, your job is to follow a reliable scholar, and once you get to that point of seeking knowledge and trying to study the issues, that's great, alhamdulillah, and we should all, that's something many of us should aspire to. But for the average Muslim, it's the issue of difference of opinion comes down to follow somebody that you trust. How do you trust somebody? You go based on an institution, based on a reliable place that the community has supported and backed
alhamdulillah,
up.
we have that in the West. Yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
there's some community infrastructure
For sure,
everywhere,
for sure,
most
alhamdulillah,
places.
for sure. But then the next step is, okay, now what happens when you encounter a different opinion? That's the issue, right? And that's like that's tearing up relationships all the time, and that we really don't understand how to encounter a different opinion.
That's true.
Both an Islamic opinion and a different opinion. Like we take, for example, different people's different opinions as an attack on our own. That happens often. Where it's like, if I say, hey, I follow this opinion, it's like you're saying that my opinion. It's like if I say I follow my opinion,
Yeah.
it's like I'm saying that your opinion is worse.
Yeah.
Whereas I might have just simply not come across yours.
Or like you think you're better than us?
Yeah, it's that mentality, and it's maybe part of it is an inferiority complex, but at the end of the day, everybody like agrees that, hey, we shouldn't we should respect we should disagree respectfully, but we don't realize because everybody has a line, right, where they'll then fall into disrespect, and
Yeah.
that's acceptable. In the sense of like, an eye for an eye, right? It's better to forgive, but an eye for an eye. So that's fair. It's like sometimes there are situations in which you don't have to be the nice person, but
So tell us how you deal with that on Twitter, because I know a lot of people come for you.
I don't necessarily always deal with it in the best way. But what it comes down to though is recognizing where that line should be. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So somebody just disagreeing with your opinion, that's not where the line should be. Somebody challenging your opinion, that's not where the line should be. But then it goes into, say, mockery, for example, name calling,
Absolutely.
accusing intentions. And it's like, it doesn't, so some people will say, well, their intentions were revealed when they did X, Y, and Z. It's like, this is preposterous, because somehow you think that the only explanation for that action is yours. It's incredibly arrogant. It's
Yeah.
incredibly arrogant, and it's like it's like just in that action itself. Once you've made the criteria for criticism, unseen actions and unseen words, unseen motives, intentions, for example. Once the criteria is the unseen, there's nothing in the seen world that I can do to convince you, because you're not criticizing me based on the seen world.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. So it's this comes down to This is what happens when we see a lot of accusing intentions and whatnot, and this happens, by the way, about scholars. This happens about lay people.
We were talking about this actually before we started recording. Where we should talk about principles, not personalities.
Absolutely, and that's
because they stay consistent. People change.
Yeah, there's so many rules, man, to just general like conflict resolution.
Someone could be a righteous person, right, and die like a kafir. You get what I'm saying? And someone can be a kafir and die a righteous person, right? Like, and people are not like stationary. People change. People's ideas change. People's positions change. That's why it's important to like criticize principles. Like,
Yeah.
certain actions, values, right? We should stay away from like name calling, like unless, it has certain conditions, but we won't get into that. But like in general, we should talk about like, hey, like doing this is wrong.
You know what's the funny thing is that like all of these things are things that we agree about, but I think
Yeah.
what we should also recognize is the reason why they end up coming out in public is because a lot of these things are beliefs that we privately hold anyway. Like for
So-
example, I can say, hey, I respect Humam, I respect Sim, but if internally I really hold disrespect towards you guys, and your difference is a difference of opinion, or for example, or whatever it is, your belief is something that I take issue with, even if I act like on the surface like I'm okay with you, if internally I have an issue, that's going to come out eventually, and even if it doesn't, that's still an issue.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like we have to, like when we talk about husn al-dhan, a lot of times it comes to, for example, make 70 excuses and whatnot. Those 70 excuses don't just have to happen externally when you face somebody. Internally, that should be a part of your dialogue.
So I have a question for you. So how would you define what's okay to have differences of opinion with, and how and what's not okay?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by
it comes back to honesty.
it depends on what you
Right?
mean by okay, right? So for example, is it okay for a person to be a disbeliever? You know what I mean? It's like if by okay you mean that like it's fine for you to live and function peacefully without me interrupting your life, then yeah, of course. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
But if you're gonna say, is it okay, say for a like, let's be specific, right? Instead of just like using ambiguous terms.
So like let's say for example that
Yeah.
you and someone else are speaking at a conference, for example.
Sure,
Right, and you're on the same table.
sure,
Yeah, because you know how they have two people,
sure.
right? Let's say you disagree fundamentally with one of the ideologies that they have,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It depends how what that ideology is. Again,
Okay.
like it's like so many of these things need to be specific.
yeah.
And it's like that's one of the reasons why even when it comes to disagreements, it's like you better define the terms of the disagreement clearly before you get into confrontation, right? So if I'm not going to get into the topic that we had before the the podcast, but even if it's something like you tell me, say, I don't think that we should have a person who believes in a person who believes in X, okay?
Yeah.
And I say, oh, well, like this person has never publicly expressed that they believe in X or whatever. Well, their actions imply this and this. Okay, yeah, but like have you what if like I find contradictions to that? You know what I mean? So it's like we need to be so specific with our issues. So instead of saying they believe in X, how about you actually go into the issues? Well, they believe this specific point. You know what I mean? And that's the point that I have a disagreement with. Like we should be able to pinpoint our disagreements into specifics rather than just giving broad labels and broad generalizations.
What if they themselves ascribe themselves to labels that imply?
That's different. That's a different discussion. I was going into if those labels aren't there. You know what I mean? If they imply that, that's a whole different conversation on what is the use of this label okay or not. And I think that's what the conversation should be about. You're right, principles over personalities. So it shouldn't be about, hey, what does this person mean by this, but rather here's the issues, for example, of using this term.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, what was the when we were at ICNA, we were talking about. What were we talking
We were
about?
talking when we met that brother. Oh, we wanted to make a point about meeting that brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He started a website that was about tafsir, tafsir of the Quran.
Not really tafsir, but like sharing reflections, basically.
Exactly.
Personal reflections.
No,
on the Quran.
isn't tafsir reflections?
Not
the- you-
necessarily. Just because tafsir is a
Commentary.
Tafsir
It's commentary.
it has a connotation that it's from a scholar.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's if I just share like a reflection on the Quran, that's not tafsir, right? And the idea
It's
of this
commentary.
project is that they
Yeah,
share
true.
like just reflections.
True.
You know, it's something that I just really respected about that brother, mashallah, and something actually that I noticed about a lot of people that I met this weekend, and that I got the chance to speak to, alhamdulillah, is that there are a lot of Muslims who are open to working with each other and collaborating despite differences, as long as there are shared principles. And I feel like sometimes a lot of our conversations are so focused on our differences and like what my issue is with a certain person or why they are wrong, rather than focusing on actually, and those are important sometimes to highlight.
Yeah.
But there is a necessary need for us to, when it comes to building bridges, actually highlighting the principles and seeing, if we can work with those principles to produce something of benefit to the community,
For sure. I think that's something that the Muslim community needs to work on, honestly, because what we see is that there are a lot of people that are focused on there are different groups focused on different outcomes, right? And they produce different products. The problem is that, they're not willing to accept the fact that we all need each other, right? Like you got certain movements that are focused on pumping out scholars, right? Which is very commendable.
Yeah.
And then you have certain movements that are social, right? And they do a lot of social work and community work, right? Which is also commendable, right? Too often you'll find that like these two groups don't really get along.
Yep.
And that's problematic because you need both.
Exactly.
Right? And you have like social justice organizations like for example like AMP, right? They do a lot of important work. You know what I mean?
Well, there's also a fatigue that's set in with a lot of social justice work or even grassroots activity. I think a lot of Muslims are just like, you know what, the fruits of my labor I'm not seeing any.
And that's why that's why the groups need each other, right? Because if they were in like a weekly halaqa, right? Or if they if they did like a daily dua, or you know what I mean? Or if they were educated about like why you actually do things. So you get what I mean?
Yaqeen Institute had a personality quiz, a spiritual personality quiz that went out a couple weeks ago, I believe. And so they basically put you into like 4 different personality types.
Okay. I love those things. I've done that one. I did the Briggs Meyer one.
This one's incredible.
Which one are you?
Who'd you get, Tareq? Which Sahabi?
I got Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu.
Nice. I got Sayyidina Ali.
MashaAllah. I got so that one was Heart of Inspiration.
I'm scared to do this.
I got Hand of Power.
I mean the options. It's between 4 different. That was my second one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Subhanallah. So
do you think that's sacrilege? I don't know.
No. So basically,
there's people who would find that a little bit offensive.
It's not saying you are like the Sahabi. What it basically does is it gives you like there's a full research paper that goes with it that presents this model. But basically, what they talked about in that, or what it does is it shows you that, it tells you like basically your approach or like how you approach ilm and how you approach amal, so like knowledge, and how you approach like service and work, and like the type of the Sahabi that like your tendencies should aspire you to be like, and why for example your approaches make you not just similar to them, but like how they would approach, for example, these fields. So the 4 possibilities are Umar radhiyallahu anhu, Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu, Uthman, and Ali radhiyallahu anhuma. And so the reason why I wanted to make that point, I wanted to mention that everybody should take that quiz. I think it's beneficial, nice. MashaAllah. It's through Yaqeen Institute. But the next point that I wanted to make was there was a question in there that was asking people how they kind of like approached working with organizations. So, for example, should we be supporting organizations like despite any differences, or like should we be focusing on correcting the wrongs before we collaborate with them, or should we focus on like working with them and like fixing the things as we go along? So it's like they asked it in a very detailed way, which I really liked, subhanallah, because it showed a lot of the reasons why sometimes we feel like certain movements lack the support or lack the community, and it comes down to what we prioritize. As I mentioned earlier, what we prioritize and what we value comes into it. So if I'm, for example, so worried that say the Mamluks are going to make a major catastrophic mistake, maybe it's not worth engaging with them, because that mistake is going to be because that mistake will outdo any of the good. But maybe somebody else is like, look, maybe there are some mistakes, but the reality is that the good, inshallah, will outweigh that to a degree that is acceptable from my personal judgment.
Right.
So the reason why I'm saying that is because I think we have to recognize when whether it's a cause or a movement or an organization, whatever it is, when we're engaging with them, we have to like be very conscious from ourselves. Why are we engaging with them, or why are we not engaging with them? A lot of times our reasons, for example, for not engaging or supporting with something is something that's unfounded.
Just because it's them.
Sometimes it's because it's them. Sometimes it's just because it's not us. Sometimes it's because, somebody might have, stereotypes or judgments or, prejudice. Sometimes it's simply because somebody believes like they're, too uneducated, whatever.
Imam al-Banna has a beautiful saying. He used to say, let us cooperate on that which we agree and excuse each other on that which we disagree. And I think this is this is why you'll find like the Islamic movement. It serves as kind of like a bridge, between the different groups of Muslims, right?
Yeah.
Like he has another saying where he's like hold on, how often do you see Salafis and Sufis getting along?
Never. I mean,
never.
nowadays we do. Nowadays, I will say.
I mean, not
Now,
really.
when we were young,
you know what I'll say?
Okay, for example, like I know, our partner organization, Muslim Matters, they were originally branded as a Salafi organization. Now they have people like Dr. Shadi who write on there regularly, and there's many other people who are associated with Sufism who are writing on there, and it's become an open platform for everyone to write on.
Exactly. So that's actually one of Imam al-Banna's goals. He actually said, عقيدتنا سلفية وروحانيتنا صوفية. Right. So his goal was shumuliyah, to like all encompassing. Right.
Yeah.
His goal was to encompass the entire Muslim community and like activate them for to do good work. Right. Like regardless of their little intricacies and like opinions. And so his philosophy was basically like, hey, look, we have disagreements, but we can come together to like, for example, in our American context, we can come together to talk about Islamophobia, right?
Yeah.
Like we can come together and like deal with like people who
are
are anti-Islam. Exactly. We can deal with atheism together.
Yeah.
Like what Salafi and Sufi is going to disagree about atheism? Like, come on. You get what I mean?
And I think that's happening to a certain extent, or to actually a larger extent nowadays. I think there are a lot more collaborations
Absolutely
that are happening in all across the Western world, because 10, 15 years ago it was just really bad. But and I think it's a sign for good things to come, inshallah, that that the Muslim Ummah is finally realizing, like, hey, the world doesn't care about you being Sufi, Salafi, or whatever, but it cares that you have this, you got that Muslim name, and that's all that matters to you. And that's why all these people are getting killed all across Burma, China, Syria, everywhere. So
see, I think like these arguments, while I do agree they've swelled down, it feels like there's still like, pockets that they still keep coming back up.
It comes back up because more recently, because of the whole UAE thing that has happened. And I think that kind of stirred some emotions, and I think that wasn't really a fair way of engagement that some people chose to do. And I think that, and maybe they were sincere about it, but I really feel like that wasn't a logical, coherent argument.
But I think a big part of it too, though, is that there are still some types of teachers who, even if they don't necessarily preach against, people in specific, or there are some people who, how do I say this delicately? They are.
You don't have to be delicate. You're on the Mad Mamluks, okay?
Exactly.
So just lay it out. By the way, for the listeners, Tareq is a very nice guy. He doesn't like hurting people's feelings.
At all.
He gave us a laundry list of things that we can't talk to him about, because he's gonna go off the wall about it, and he's gonna hurt people's feelings.
A laundry list? Come on.
It was a laundry list. Okay, it was a
putting
list.
it gently.
No, but the point I wanted to make was that there are people who, like, the way that they talk about the other groups.
They still inspire their students with these feelings, is what
it's like when they talk about the other groups, it's like they spend so much time talking about the other. It's like, look, even if you are saying it for the sake of criticism, and it doesn't even have to be like a religious sect. It's like talking about any certain, even any ideology, any concept. It's like, when you keep talking about the other in such a like negative and say hateful or violent or aggressive way, and that's the only way you speak about them, even if you don't call specifically for people to do something harmful, people will still end up doing something harmful. And so there has to be a level of just balance in the way that we talk about things that we disagree with.
I think it has some good and bad, though. Like you can't just be,
I'm sure it has some good and bad.
You can't just be like willy-nilly, like we're all going to hold hands and sing.
No, but see, that's a straw man, bro. Come on.
No.
Like, we don't need to hold hands.
I'm not responding to you, but I'm just saying that there should be a balance too, because
but for example,
you also need to teach. And if you're a sheikh, for example, you need to say, hey, this is outside of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. This is not.
But you know the difference between. But you know the difference, for example, between saying like, our brothers of this perception, they believe, or this persuasion, they believe this and this, and we believe it's wrong because this and this.
Mm.
That is so different than saying there are
That's-
some fools who
but-
still believe that X and Y are
no, but
valid
there's-
interpretations, and this is from ignorance.
No,
May
but
Allah never curse us.
I'm sorry. There's a red
People
line,
do that,
though.
bro.
Yeah, but I think in
Yeah,
sometimes
they become the
sometimes-
minority though, Tareq. Come on.
Sometimes it's
I'm
justified.
not saying it's a majority. For me,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's one of the. I'm definitely not saying it's a majority. For me,
Sometimes that's justified though.
so I'm not. It's not. Again, it's not even
Yeah.
about justification. I'm talking about the ramifications of that. That's it. I'm saying that what happens is if we don't speak with in respect when we have differences. Again, and I'm not talking about some things that are like blatant, whatever. And I'm still saying we can have harsh disagreements. There are situations in which that is definitely qualified. But the point is, if I sit in a room, and I believe that Humam is my brother in Islam, okay, and you know when I'm outside of this room, I say Humam is this bad thing and this bad thing and this bad thing and this bad thing, okay, and then I bring the people from the other room into this room. Even if I say you're my brother right now, there's no way those people are coming in with that same level of mercy and
Well, that's
acceptance.
just nifaq. That's just hypocrisy.
It's not necessarily nifaq, bro. It happened. That's maybe a step too far.
No. That's nifaq. If you tell me to my face that you're my brother and then you
No,
go,
no. But I'm saying the way that what I mean by that is, for example, even to them, I might say afterwards, "Hey, he's my brother." You know what I
that
mean,
wouldn't make any sense.
bro? Think about the way that we criticize other Muslims sometimes. We speak about them with such harsh and condemning terms that we leave almost no, because we don't express those positive feelings. So I mean, generally the way that the Prophet ﷺ approached nasiha, the way that the Prophet ﷺ approached nasiha in general, this is not the same as public condemnation. Obviously, I'm talking about dealing with each other on a social level. We have to generally, if you want somebody to accept your nasiha, accept your advice, you start with saying something nice first, right? This is just like basic like advice. I want to say a couple of nice things, and it's the same thing. I think that if I want to speak about something that my brother in Islam did that was wrong, to start with saying, look, we respect this person's values, we respect his intentions, etc. But here are the problems with what they did. That's fine. But I'm saying if you only start with the direct harsh terminologies and harsh condemnations, I'm not saying that's wrong all the time. I want to make that very clear. I'm not saying that's always wrong. But what I'm saying is we should recognize that the ramifications will be that the people who are listening will probably be even more harsh in their reaction. And that might create more animosity. So maybe there are situations where you want that animosity. That's not for me to judge. I'm speaking ambiguously.
That's what I'm saying. So like in my opinion, if we're talking about like different groups within Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, then absolutely we should be more than courteous with each other, right? To their face and behind the back, right? Because these people are from us. We have the same creed, right? But the way I see it, for example, like I'm not gonna like try to find common ground with Qadianis, for example.
I mean,
like there's no common ground here, Habibi. Like you get what I'm saying? Like
it's not about finding common ground.
There
bro.
are borders.
It's not about finding common ground. That's not the point that I wanted to make. But for example, like Qadianis, for example,
yes,
or Ahmadis, or whatever term is
Qadianis,
appropriate.
yeah.
The point that I want to make about that is simply that if we have a disagreement with them and we have a goal of, say, pointing them to what we believe is the truth, okay, then the respectful way to do that is to be like, look, like for example, we see that you guys are trying to, you say something nice, you know what I mean? If you can't find something nice in their ideology, which is completely fine, say something nice about their approach, their intention, whatever, you know what I mean? Say something, because maybe they smiled at you when they started speaking, you know what I mean? It's like, I appreciate your kind approach, you know what I mean? And then it's like you criticize.
No,
I'm saying
it depends. I think you're right.
I'm saying in conversation with them. I'm saying in conversation with them.
With certain groups, yes, but there are some people that they are.
I'm saying
they deserve a harsh response.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't necessarily be harsh ever. But what I'm saying is, if you're talking to a person and you're actually trying to deliver the message, again, to me, I want to highlight something. I'm not saying harshness is not justified or not, but I'm saying if your end goal, which I think should be highlighted, if your end goal is that you want to deliver the message, then your goal should be, how do I present that message in the most effective means, without compromising your values or principles.
There's a difference between being harsh and being direct.
There is. There's an important.
You can be direct without like trying to like attack the dude, but like
of course there is.
There's no like from me, if I'm talking to a Qadiani, there's gonna be no, I respect your approach, or your
No,
intentions.
there's
You get what I'm
Humam,
saying?
I know what you're saying.
Well,
Especially, and
one
this is a
second.
problem that's kind of I've seen it. I'll talk about my own brown people from India, Pakistan. There's some people who have this, mashallah, brother. They're
We all
super
believe
polite
in La
about.
ilaha illallah.
They're super polite about everything, and like
Man qala la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah.
before they even
that's not what I'm
uttered, even before they uttered a comprehensive or even a statement about anything, I just lost respect for
I
them
know.
because they've presented themselves almost as a servant before.
Yeah, but see, that's too far. That's too far. We're definitely not going that far.
And also, if you try to like,
We don't have to
find-
bring these to
Like, if you
extremes,
have
man.
to bend over backwards to find similarities with someone, that
Why are we bending over backwards, bro? It's like this is such an exaggeration.
No, I'm not saying this is what you're doing. I'm just saying.
but you're mentioning that in response.
No, I'm
No,
going
I mean-
off on a tangent.
Well, look, Tareq, I think there's a I think the public, the people, they respect strength. Okay, when you have to realize like there's innate characteristics of humans that are still true that we've learned since we were kids on the playground.
For sure.
People respect power. They respect physical
Absolutely.
power, wealth, money, intelligence. These are structures that are in place in the human psyche that allows people to have any form of respect for you. And when you make yourself out to be super polite and trying to deliver your message, I think people just like look at this guy and think of him as this guy's kind
But
of
see, that's why there's always context.
we'll see,
Another aspect to look at it
there's
is
always
if
context.
you're giving them da'wah, for example, and you're bending over backwards to find common ground to the extent where
I agree
to the
100%
point where-
on that point,
to
bro.
the point where you're not offering them something other than what they have. You're not offering something new. So, like, for example, if someone
Yeah, like all religions are the same, perennialism stuff.
like
Yeah,
this, like I was on the city bus and this guy was like, "Hey, you believe in Jesus?" He was a Christian guy trying to give me da'wah, right?
Mhm.
And then I was like, "Yeah, Jesus is a prophet in Islam." Okay,
Mhm.
and so he was like, "Yeah, we got a lot of we got a lot in common with Muslims or blah blah blah." مش عارف إيش. And he kept trying to find similarities.
yeah.
And so I told him, "All right, يعني, if we're so similar, why are you giving me da'wah?
Why aren't you Muslim?
What are you trying to give me?"
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So also when we talk to people, we have to present ourselves like, hey,
Bro,
we have something completely different.
These things all go without being said. It's like I agree with every single point that you made, but the thing that I'm pushing on simply is that we have to realize so often, and maybe that some of this just happens online, but we have to realize that the way that we talk to people, if we're actually interested in getting them to accept the message, the standard of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was politeness, mercy, respect, etc. This is the standard. So, for example, Sim, you mentioned like people being harsh or kind of like being more not harsh,
direct.
Rigid.
Yeah, direct. No, but you mentioned powerful, for example.
Yeah, I'm talking about innate characteristics
for
that
sure.
that allow humans to gravitate towards anyone. Like
For sure, but you could be respectful with power. You could be kind with power. Like you could believe you could.
Sure, you can.
You don't have
Sure,
to. You don't have to
absolutely.
bend
Yeah.
over backwards, and that's the point.
But I think we are not in a happy middle ground right now. I think we're on a very.
So do you think
you
do you think we're being too nice in our
I
interaction?
think we are,
Absolutely.
and I'm part of this. In terms of like some of the interactions or the discourse that I have with
I see
Christian
this a lot in
people of the
interfaith,
Christian
too.
faith. I do a lot of Christian faith. What's it called? Interfaith dialogue with within my community members, and
I kid you not,
feel
at
like
most interfaith gatherings, like the most thing you hear, like if you hear like a Muslim and a Christian sitting, like the most common thing you'll hear, like, just walking by, is like, "Yeah, we believe in Jesus too. He's a prophet."
Yeah, I
It's
mean, like, I'm
getting old.
really doubting. I'm kind of in this process of evaluating the interactions, because I don't see anyone. Yeah, they might like you and everything, but no one. You're not changing their position on anything.
Okay, but is the goal of interfaith dialogue changing their position?
It should be.
Okay, so that's a
It should be part of the goals. It should.
So
One of the goals is that, yes, you explain that any type of Islamophobia that they have in their mind is there's no basis for. Yes, that's one of the goals, but there's also should be the goal that I am trying to convince you that Islam is the solution for all your ailments.
So I don't have an opinion on that, just because I don't know enough to have an opinion on what the goal of interfaith dialogue should be, but I think there's multiple goals. And I think for many people, I mean, I do agree that in those spaces sometimes there is too much of this almost like almost like perennialistic approach of like, hey, like we all believe the same thing, and this.
We're all Abrahamic. That's a common one I hear.
But we all
the three
are.
Abrahamic. I mean, we're not.
I've gotten
We
tired of this
literally are.
Abrahamic.
We're literally not. I'm sorry.
We are.
No,
No.
we are part of the.
No. We're the three Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are not all Abrahamic, right? Like Ibrahim would never associate partners with God. Like
That's not the point, bro. It's
but I'm
Yeah, look,
That's
I
a
mean that's getting
technicality.
into the weeds of things, but I know it's not. It's
Hanifan
not,
Musliman. You know,
Okay,
like,
I know what you're saying, Humam, but the way that the way they're explaining Abrahamic faith is they're talking about the God of Abraham, right? And that is the God that Musa alayhi salam
We're
and
not- yeah,
Isa alayhi
we're not
salam
saying
brought
all-
from what
we're
they
not
call
saying-
for, you know.
yeah.
So we're not saying that everything else is the same
Or that
anything
all modern Christians are.
So I understand the frustration Humam is saying as well, that that we're kind of putting ourselves under the umbrella of Abraham when it's
we're not differentiating ourselves.
yeah
is what I'm saying.
we're not telling people, we're not giving
Okay,
them a
no, I
compelling
agree.
We're just
reason.
one of the three like godly religions. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, we're not
Okay.
giving a compelling reason to become Muslims.
Exactly.
Okay, so if that's the question, I do believe that in general Muslims are so a lot of Muslims are so concerned with just being tolerated that they forget that they actually have something to offer the world. I 100% believe in
Absolutely.
that, and I definitely believe that's an issue. But the thing is, when it comes to, for example, when we're talking about the issue of do we need more kindness, whatever, etc. I think we have to differentiate, the spaces in which these conversations are happening, right? And what type of the conversation. So, yeah,
And between who?
yeah, and between who? So, for example, something like interfaith dialogue. It's like, well, we do need to maintain respect and kindness, etc.
Absolutely.
While also,
Being
making
very
sure,
direct.
while being direct about what we believe and not compromising our values. And I also believe that we never compromise our values in any situation. Our values have to stay consistent. Otherwise, your kindness is useless.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's clear. And when we talk about values, we're talking about the Islamic values and principles. That's what
Yes.
we're talking about. But the second point to that is that we have to realize that we are becoming so comfortable in giving a pass to harshness, when harshness is generally for exceptional situations, extraneous situations, or for situations where you actually know the circumstances well enough to make a judgment call.
Yeah.
We can't, we keep using examples, man, of like random situations where we'll say Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was harsh in this situation, in that situation. It's like, yeah, but dude, you're cherry picking those moments. You're picking those moments without looking at the collective body and the collective teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's such a straw man argument where we say,
Well,
are you saying we always have to be kind? No.
Many of the situations where the Prophet was being direct or strict or even harsh was in a situation that he was the leader of a state, and he wasn't. It wasn't like engagement on a personal level, and this is when there was a threat or not even a threat. Maybe it was an attack or a verbal assault towards the dignity of Muslims in general, or a large portion of Muslims. Like it called for a response as a head of state, So those are the moments where the Prophet was in those. So yes, on a local level, we have to find a middle ground. We're not saying that we need to be jerks or
But you know what, that middle ground is not. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
That middle ground is not just something that we should have with each other, like with the people we disagree with, but privately. That's really a point I want to hit home. Like we have to be able to, when we talk about differences of opinion and respect for them or whatever, it's not just about how we approach them, the people that we disagree with. You know what I mean? So that's one of the reasons why, like, if we sit and there's a group that we disagree with, privately we should be speaking about them with the same dignity that we would if they were there.
Within us. Are you
with
talking
it-
about
with-
groups that are within us?
I don't know how you define that term, but I'm speaking in general about how we speak about any group. We should speak about them with the same. We should speak about them privately with the same respect that we would if we treated them. If we spoke about them, directly if they were there. Does that make sense?
That's fair.
I jumbled my words, but no. The reason why I say that is because it's so often that it's like, yeah, we respect our difference of opinion, but then by the way, it's not even just about ideologies. It's even people. You know what I mean? So for
Yeah.
example, me and Humam, we have a conflict with Sim, for example. Okay, when Sim is there, we're not gonna address it, right? But maybe, for example, when we leave, I'll be like, man, like it was about time, bro. He was getting too comfortable. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, the way that we speak privately has a consequence on our heart. It has a big consequence.
Absolutely.
And that harm is going to be doubled. It's doubled when it's coupled with the fact that in his presence we did not maintain that consistency.
Yeah.
Like we have to have that. We have to have that consistency morally and in our dialogue as well, internally and externally. Like this is why it's so necessary that even when we speak in internal Muslim dialogue, it's like when we talk about things like, you know, PC culture and whatever, it's like there's obviously issues within that culture, but you know, we should be striving to be perfecting our internal dialogue as well as the external. You know what I mean? Like just like we're sensitive externally, we should try to monitor that privately and internally as well. You know what I mean? So just like we wouldn't gossip with strangers, we shouldn't gossip with our family. It's like it's something as simple as that, right?
Absolutely.
And obviously when it comes to gossip stuff, like for example, there's different fiqh situations for things. So I'm not going to go into that, but just the general principle.
Yeah. No, I think that's very fair.
Yeah. So, closing thoughts. Tareq has to run soon. I know we're kind of a little bit over schedule.
How long have we been?
We're a few minutes over schedule.
Subhanallah.
Ooh.
Well,
That went by very quickly.
Subhanallah. One thing I would say is first of all, I apologize that I've been turning around like every 2 seconds to like cough or like drink water. I've been a little under the weather. The second thing I'd say is just like a quick reflection from the Masikna convention. I was really positively surprised by how many people really understood what the purpose of a program like this is. I feel like there's a lot of people who sometimes will criticize these types of initiatives from the perspective of, oh, this is not a real gathering of ilm, this is not scholarship, this is not how we teach our deen. It's like, dude, this is not the job of a convention like this. There are many criticisms, by the way. I'm the first one to list criticisms of any project like this. Not this one, you know, necessarily specifically, but there's always criticisms. But
of any group or project, there's always
criticisms. But at the same time, it's like some people criticize with the intention of destruction. Right, there's like with this should all be destroyed, boycotted, etc., etc. At the same, there is merit to bringing people together for the benefits of socializing and bringing the believers together. And there's so many people that, you know, their spirits are rejuvenated through something like this. And so, you know, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue bringing hearts together, and to perfect the means in which we come together, inshallah.
I mean, so in terms of something, forget about Masikna for a second, but in terms of improving the content provided at major conventions such as Masikna, ISNA, RIS, what would you suggest?
So one thing that I feel like is necessary is there has to be boosting of say like smaller names. I feel like sometimes you know, these conferences will rely on, you know, bringing in a lot of big name speakers for the sake of bringing in the crowds. The reality is some of these conferences now have become like such a big name that even if you don't have the same, you know, number of big name speakers, you're still going to attract a similar crowd. And there isn't even this necessity that, okay, every year we have to necessarily be growing, or every year we have to be, you know, having a bigger number, etc. There should be an effort to promote the work of like local scholars, for example, in an area. There should be an effort to promote people who, because it gives also people from their local communities more appreciation for them. You know, like if you bring like somebody from a small town,
that's real.
If you bring somebody from a small town and you bring them and you put them on the stage, maybe for them they don't like that. You know what I mean? And a lot of them, that's one of the reasons why they don't come. They're not comfortable with it. But the people locally will start to view them and appreciate them in a different sense. Maybe that's wrong, right? Maybe that's too superficial and we should be appreciating scholarship, etc. But the reality is the hearts of people are, you know, malleable to these types of things. And when they see fame and they see attention, more people will flock. So maybe we could say that that's something worth challenging. But I do think that for conference culture, if we're saying how could we use this space to do something of benefit, I think bringing, you know, smaller name speakers and scholars to these spaces could be a benefit, inshallah.
Honestly, I think that scholars, you know, tend to respond to the needs of the people, right? And you know, I think that a way that the talks can improve in quality is that if the people improve in quality, right? And I know it's a very blanket statement, but you know, this is a message for the general Muslim masses, is that take your deen seriously. You know what I mean? Like, make an effort to learn something, teach something to your kids. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to come to these gatherings and expect it to be just like a Jum'ah khutbah, like just a reminder. Like you actually want to learn something. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying you have to go become like a talib ilm and like study like usul al-fiqh. No, I'm not saying that. But, you know, at least make an effort to like take your deen seriously. The moment you do that, the moment there will be demand, right? And when there's demand, there's going to be more supply naturally, right?
Right. I know we earlier today, us three were having a discussion about how, well, we kind of benefited from movements and things, and we want to talk about, at least from my perspective, I want to raise the level of thinking and thought that younger, or not even younger, just Muslims in general have, and raise their level of awareness and how they evaluate things. And that's something that's been very passionate to me, and I feel like one of the ways that we can improve the situation that we are in as an ummah is to increase our level of thinking. And I hope that, I don't know how this vehicle would be delivered to on a stage like ISNA or ICNA or RIS, but we have to get smarter, and these organizations have to be invested in increasing the level of thinking, and they have to really believe that, hey, you know, we just can't have we can't be capitalizing on people's ignorance. You have to have more faith in people. If you want them to be as active and as politically involved as you want them to be, you're going to have to make them more intelligent, and that's a project. It's not going to be done easily. It's something that's going to be an investment that you can't just lose sight of.
Absolutely.
So,
But
yeah.
people need to take the initiative. Like, my advice to anyone listening is that like wherever you are, there has to be like a Muslim organization operating within your locality.
Right.
Go and ask them, like, if you have a mass chapter in your in your city, go ask them to join a weekly halaqah. Like, why not? Like, commit to something regular, even if it's not very heavy. Commit to something regular. Like, have something to show for yourself, like in front of Allah and for your family. It's like, it's literally for your own good. Like, Islam will not lose anything by you not, you know, engaging with it, but you will lose a lot by not engaging with it, right?
Yeah.
So you take that initiative, and when you create enough demand, okay, there will be supply.
Yeah.
And just one last comment, I think. Just because you don't completely support an organization or you know, a community project or whatever, you know, and again, this isn't just about, you know, big things. Even like locally at your masjid, maybe you have issues with, you know, people on the board or the imam or whatever. Even with those issues, we have to recognize, without getting involved and trying to make a positive change, you're leaving that to get worse, right? And you might not necessarily have the best ideas, and you know, maybe engagement would be more harmful, right? But I feel like it's important for us in general to take the steps to be willing to engage with people who we don't necessarily agree entirely with.
Absolutely.
That being said, let's give a quick shout out to our sponsors. halfardeen.com is a place you go for the private matrimonial experience. Go ahead and get your profile set up in as little as 5 minutes.
Tareq's single, by the way.
Tareq is single.
Tareq is single.
Mashallah, Tareq.
He likes to be called Tareq with a
At the end.
Tareq.
I have no comment.
Single
comment.
sisters.
Tareq.
Nope.
Hit us up. We'll be happily the intermediary. Info at themadmamluks.com.
Handsome fella, mashallah.
Just
nope.
message us if you like this handsome young buck
he
named Tareq
likes
Tamr.
to dig deep into a lot
He
of
has a
issues.
very strong following on Twitter that he doesn't want people to know
Mashallah.
about.
It's not.
Likes
No
to.
comment.
A lot of vigor on his Twitter following.
I have no comment.
If you have questions for him, ask him on his curious cat.
No.
Or does he have a curious cat?
Yeah, he does.
I have like, I don't answer anything.
He's a handsome fellow,
I'm so-
mashallah. Ladies, if you're listening, yeah, he's
He
single
is.
and ready to.
I thought this was an
mingle.
advertisement for a sponsor.
I'm sorry, he's single and ready to have Ardeen.
I didn't sponsor this episode.
Well, why didn't you should have come to the Halfardeen event?
Yeah, you should've,
Tareq.
bro.
You know
I'm so
what?
disappointed
I
in you.
saw Baba Ali, but he was packing up, so I didn't want to bother
That was
him.
on the last day. That was the event happened the day before.
I had
No,
I had
Mass is
previous,
a really good place to
I
get
had
married,
pre-
man.
I
I
had
got married
previous
through
commitment.
TI camp. I'm just letting you guys know, and I know so many people got married through these functions.
You got married through the Minna camp or what?
No, TI Mass camp.
Mass camp.
Tarbiya and Ilm camp. I mean, I didn't get married there, but
You met your
yeah,
significant
I
other
met
there.
my now wife there. Alhamdulillah. So if you want to get married, yeah, don't go into Islamic activism with the intention of solely getting
Dude,
married.
I'm
Like, go in
telling you.
there with pure intentions. Inshallah, Allah will take care of you.
Yeah, just meeting so many people who are over the age of 30 and unmarried. I'm telling you, man, the most important commodity you have is your age, and if you don't realize that, I don't know what how you'll understand how difficult it is to start a family at older age, at ages that are in the late 30s or 40s. So make sure you get on your game and go on halfardeen.com or message
Get
Tariq
married.
and get married.
Get cuffed.
Wow,
He's,
no comment.
He's available.
Yeah.
All right. wahidinvest.com is the place you go for halal investing needs. Make sure your income is generated in a Sharia compliant manner. Go to wahidinvest.com. And finally, mywasiya.com is a website that is dedicated to creating a Sharia compliant will. Get your Sharia compliant will created in as little as 15 minutes. Print that baby out and take it to a notarizer or the bank and get it notarized, and you have a legal will made very quickly. So make sure you click on the link in the description below for a special discount on mywasiya.com. All right, that being said, Tariq and Humam, thank you so much
It's a
for joining us this evening. I
It's a
know
pleasure
it's a
and
little
an
bit late.
honor.
You guys are on your way back to Canada, and Humam is going back to Minnesota
Yep.
tonight? Or
Inshallah
So
ta'ala.
John, a few more
Tonight,
days.
inshallah.
all right, then that being said, my name is Sim. I bid you all farewell. We'll see you on Mad Monday. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Salam.